5,000 years ago, in an open field in England, a people with no writing, no wheel, no metal, and no knowledge of the math we learn in school, stood up stones weighing 25 tons, laid others perfectly on top, and aligned it all with the sun with a precision that still impresses engineers today. Then they left, without a single line explaining why. This is the Mystery Archive, Stonehenge. The most famous and most misunderstood monument in the world. Today I separate what science has actually proven from what's still pure enigma, how they moved the stones, where they came from, what it was for, and why, even with all our modern technology, we still can't close the case. Open the file with me. First, forget the image of some rocks in a field. Stonehenge is a machine. A ring of giant sandstone stones, the sarsens, up to 7 meters tall, crowned by horizontal lintels that form continuous rings. Inside, a horseshoe of smaller bluestones. And around it, a system of ditches, mounds and pits stretching for kilometers. And it was built in phases, over more than 1,000 years. That's the first shock, not one generation. Dozens of generations, passing the project from parent to child, holding a plan longer than the time that separates us from the Middle Ages. What kind of society maintains a project for 1,000 years with no written manual? The oldest phase, around 3000 BC, didn't even have the giant stones. It was a great circle of ditch and a ring of pits, probably with wooden posts. And buried there, archaeologists found cremated human bones, dozens of them. Before it was a stone temple, Stonehenge was one of the largest cemeteries in prehistoric Britain. Then, around 2500 BC, came the phase that haunts us, the stones. And here begin the two great engineering mysteries. The first is the bluestones, the smaller ones, 2 to 4 tons. Geological analysis traced their rock to a specific mountain range in Wales, the Preseli Hills. More than 240 kilometers away. 240 kilometers. With stones weighing several tons. No wheel, no pack animals trained for it, no roads. Science has strong hypotheses, wooden sledges over rolling logs, or transport by raft along rivers and the coast, and modern experiments proved you can drag a stone like that with ropes, wood, and a lot of coordinated people. The physical how is basically solved. But what physics solves, logic reopens. Why? There was good stone a few kilometers from Stonehenge. Why carry specific stones 240 kilometers when identical rock sat right next door? The answer gaining ground is unsettling. The stones weren't valued for the stone. They were valued for their origin. They came from a sacred place, and maybe they were themselves already a monument, assembled in Wales, dismantled and brought here. This theory got a huge boost when archaeologists found, in the Preseli Hills, the remains of an earlier stone circle, with holes exactly the size of Stonehenge's bluestones, dated centuries before. The conclusion taking shape, Stonehenge may be, in part, a second-hand monument. A people dismantled their ancestors' temple and rebuilt it hundreds of kilometers away. A move of the spiritual capital, in stone. The second engineering mystery is the sarsens, the 25-ton giants. For decades it was thought they came from 25 kilometers away. In 2020, a chemical analysis of a fragment, taken by a worker in the 1950s and returned, settled it. They come from West Woods, about 25 kilometers north. Close, compared to the bluestones, but moving 25-ton blocks 25 kilometers is still a brutal feat in the joinery? Here's the detail that separates Stonehenge from a pile of rocks. The top lintels aren't just resting. They have carved joints, knobs and holes, like woodworking, mortise and tenon, that lock the stones in place. A Stone Age people applied carpentry technique to 25-ton blocks. They treated stone like wood. No one taught them that. And the top lintels are slightly curved, to form a perfect circle, and tilted to correct the perspective of someone looking up from below. That's an architect's refinement. on a 5,000-year-old monument. It's this kind of detail that makes you stop and ask, how much knowledge did these people have, that we simply erased from history because they left nothing written? Now, the million-dollar question, what was it for? And here science has a solid anchor, the solar alignment. Stonehenge is oriented precisely to sunrise on the summer solstice and sunset on the winter solstice. That's not opinion, it's measured geometry. On the longest day of the year, the sun rises aligned with the avenue leading to the monument. It was, at minimum, a monumental calendar. But calendar doesn't explain everything. The serious theories pile up. 1. Astronomical observatory, to predict solstices and maybe eclipses. 2. Religious temple, tied to a cult of the dead, the cremated bones support this. 3. Gaining ground, a place of healing. The idea is that the bluestones were considered magical, curative, and that sick people made pilgrimages from far away to touch them. Some skeletons found there show signs of illness and injury. 4. The most human theory of all, a unification project. Analysis of animal and human bones from the nearby settlement of Dangton Walls shows that people and food came from all over Britain, even Scotland, for huge feasts at solstice time. Stonehenge may have been less a temple and more a construction project that united whole tribes in a common task. The monument wasn't the goal. It was the excuse to build a nation. The scoreboard of facts, then. Confirmed, the age, built in phases between 3000–1500 BC, the bluestone's origin in Wales, 240 kilometers, the sarsen's origin at 25 kilometers, the carpentry joints, the exact solar alignment, the cremated burials, and the feasts with people from across the land. This is in the data, not in dispute. Still open, the exact method of transporting the bluestones, boat or land, no one has proven which. The main function, calendar, temple, hospital or unifying project, probably a bit of everything. And the biggest of all, the meaning. What those people felt inside it, what they believed, what words they spoke at the solstice, that died with them. Stone survives. Meaning doesn't. And the case keeps growing. In 2020, ground radar revealed, a few kilometers from Stonehenge, a ring of more than 20 giant buried pits, each over 10 meters wide, forming a circle 2 kilometers across around Dangton Walls. It's one of the largest prehistoric structures ever found in Europe, and no one knew it was there. Stonehenge wasn't an isolated monument. It was the center of a giant sacred landscape we've barely begun to map. It's worth facing the legends too, because they get in the way. No, the Druids didn't build Stonehenge, the Druids appeared thousands of years later. The monument was already an ancient ruin to them. No, it wasn't aliens or giants, every tool mark on the stones is human, made with stone hammers and antler picks, and we found those tools. The answer, it was people, is less glamorous than it was gods, and infinitely more impressive. Because think about what that means. A people we usually picture in furs and clubs planned a 1,000-year project, mastered geology enough to choose stones 240 kilometers away, applied carpentry to 25-ton blocks, calculated the sky with precision, and mobilized an entire island. With no writing. No metal. Nothing but brains, ropes, wood, and a faith we'll never fully understand. My verdict for this file: Stonehenge isn't a mystery of how, it's a mystery of mind. The engineering, science decodes. What it can't decode is the ambition, what makes a Stone Age people look at an empty field and decide to move mountains, literally, for 1,000 years, for an idea we've lost. Stonehenge is the proof in stone that primitive is the most arrogant word we ever invented. There's one more record worth grasping. For centuries, Stonehenge was the tallest human-made structure in Britain, and it stayed a place of ceremony for over 1,500 years of continuous use. Think about that, a monument used and reused for longer than Christianity has existed. Generations were born, worshipped, and buried in its shadow, each adding their own meaning to stones they didn't build. And the astronomy may go deeper than the solstice. Some researchers argue the wider landscape encodes lunar cycles too, the 18.6-year lunar standstill, suggesting these people tracked not just the sun but the complex dance of the moon across decades. If true, it means they kept astronomical records across generations, passing precise sky knowledge down a chain of memory with no writing to hold it. It's also humbling how much we're still finding. Laser scans of the stones revealed hundreds of prehistoric carvings invisible to the naked eye, axe heads and daggers etched into the rock, graffiti from the Bronze Age. Even the stones we've stared at for centuries are still hiding messages we only just learned to see. And here's a thought that lingers: Stonehenge was already ancient when the pyramids were young, already a ruin when the Romans arrived, already a mystery when the first historians tried to explain it. Every civilization that met it invented its own story, giants, wizards, the devil himself. We're just the latest in a 5,000-year line of humans standing in that field, asking the same question, and still not sure of the answer. And you? Calendar, temple, hospital, or humanity's first great collective project? Leave your verdict in the comments. And if you've been there or want to go, tell me too. I want to know who felt the chill up close. Subscribe and hit the bell, a new mystery every single day, and a full file like this one every week. The archive never really closes.